But of course, we've got to start with the story about Manchester United and this bid that is gone in for Manchester United through the Qataris and through Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, who's chairman of Qatari bank QIB. We're going to start, Jason, with you, please, because we're going to go to the Telegraph and your paper. Tom Morgan and Sam Wallace. Qataris launch United bid and pledged to make the club debt-free. Now, that's a big thing, this, isn't it? The debt-free side of it. What do you think, first of all, the reaction is going to be to all of this? Because the World Cup, of course, in Qatar created an incredible range of emotions and reactions.
Well, I think first of all, those back pages and front pages are going to change for the next edition, because my colleague Tom has just done a story saying that Jim Ratcliffe has also now submitted his bid in time for that sort of soft deadline that was set by the Rain Group. So we've now got two definite bidders for Manchester United. So that's quite interesting in itself, and two very different bidders. And going back to your point, I think Jim Ratcliffe will be the sort of popular choice in terms of, who Manchester United fans will want. Obviously, he is a Manchester United supporter. He is from the area. He's got Wall Street backing for his bid. And I think, obviously, the Qatari bid will come under a huge amount of scrutiny, as you say, not least because of the debate and the controversy around the World Cup. Obviously, the ownership by state entities, as it were, although the argument here is that it's now going to be a private individual buying Manchester United. But I think there'll be an awful lot of talk and column inches and debate around whether or not this is a bid that should be accepted and whether or not this is a bid that's in the right interests of Manchester United Football Club.
Yeah, Jason, if I could just continue with that point there, you just touched on it at the end there of what you said. Obviously, Qatar and QSI, Qatari Sports Investment, they own Paris Saint-Germain and have a very strong link with them. But from a lot of the stuff I've read, it doesn't seem to be too much concern that that's going to have an impact on buying Manchester United. Why is that?
No, I think the Qataris are quite bemused by the sort of talk of, it's them, the Qatar state, buying Manchester United. They're very, very clear that this bid has nothing to do with QSI and has nothing to do with the Qatari Investment Authority. Although, obviously, the members of the Al Thani family are board members of the QIA. And Sheikh Yasmin was at one time the chairman of QIA, but they're saying now there is no involvement and that this is a private bid from an individual. Now, as we saw with the Newcastle takeover by PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, they managed to prove that they weren't a state-controlled entity, and that obviously went through. So I think the Qataris will point to that straight away as an example of, they don't need to show any real evidence beyond what they're saying that the bid is separate from the ownership of Paris Saint-Germain. And I think they'll also argue there are even, and this is what they're saying, they're not, but they'll argue there are even clearer examples of people owning more than one football club. Now, straight away, Jim Ratcliffe obviously owns Nice in France. So if he buys Manchester United, there'll be argued there's a conflict of interest there if they play each other in a European competition. So that multi-club ownership model, there are examples of it around the world. And they will say, though, very clearly that this is a private individual making the bid, and that will be their argument.
Well, that actually brings us neatly on to you, Craig, obviously, because you cover the North East, and this is, there are a lot of similarities, aren't there, with the Newcastle situation. So you're in a very good position to talk us through how the reaction to the Newcastle takeover developed amongst the fans, because I remember there being a lot of conversation about Saudi Arabia early on, but now Newcastle are flying high in the league. It doesn't seem to be so much of an issue. How do you expect the fans of Manchester United to approach this Qatar bid?
Yeah, it goes back to the point Jason said there, and Jason intimated that the Manchester United supporters would prefer Sir Jim Ratcliffe as opposed to the Qataris. And I understand why he said that, but my experience on the ground in the North East, I honestly think football supporters at the end of the day, and whether, I'm not saying this is right or this is wrong, but ultimately they want what is best for their football team on the pitch. Now, what I will say about Qatari ownership, Saudi ownership, is that if the Qataris do get control of Manchester United, this will be the probably the genuine re-emergence of Manchester United as the absolute superpower in world football, you know. And the difference with Newcastle is, you know, the wealth is there. There is untold wealth, Saudi ownership, Qatari ownership. The Saudis have gone in at Newcastle, and because they're inheriting a football club which has spent much of the past 10 years, 20 years in the bottom half of the Premier League, the guardrails of FFP are there. They can't spend what they want at the moment. You know, they've got to work to improve those commercial partnerships to put the team in the Champions League. If you're going in at Manchester United, everything there is already in place. All it needs is owners with ambition, with drive, which the Glaziers didn't have to be the ultimate best in the world. And if the Qataris did go in, they would want that. You know, I spent a little bit of time in Riyadh recently trying to get to the bottom of this multi-layered subject of Saudi ownership of Newcastle United. And one thing I did pick up was that, you know, it's as much about bragging rights out there. And if you've got Saudi owners in the Premier League and you've got Qatari owners as well, you know, at Manchester City and at Manchester United, they are all going to want to be the number one. And to come back to the question you asked, ultimately, that is what football supporters want. Now, I use that phrase there, it's so multi-layered. There are so many different angles we can go off at this about human rights and you know, the rights and wrongs of ultimately, you know, state-owned assets, which is what these football clubs would become in many ways. But, you know, yeah, football fans want to see a winning team, and Qatari ownership of Manchester United, from what I'm reading tonight, would probably bring that.
Right, well, we can just confirm that breaking news that Jason mentioned there. INEOS, the INEOS group, led by the British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe, have officially made a bid for Manchester United. So now we have two confirmed bids, one coming from Qatar through Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, chairman of the Qatari bank QIB and son of the former Prime Minister. And now we've got a second English bid from Jim Ratcliffe's INEOS group. I'll just get your live reaction to that, guys. Obviously, Jason, you had a bit of an inkling that this was already going to be announced. But, I mean, how will the club look at it, though? I mean, we've heard about how the fans might approach, and some fans would rather have Sir Jim Ratcliffe. But the club, surely, would just want the most money, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I think that's the point. Or rather, the owners want the most money, and the Rain Group who are conducting the sale want the most money. So I think the nightmare scenario, unless the Qatari is going to offer an incredible amount of money, was that they'd only have one bidder, or in fact no bidders. So obviously, at least now they've got two, and possibly there might be even more coming out in the next few minutes, or obviously with the soft deadline even after that. So they want to create a market. They want to create a bidding war for Manchester United. And what's going to happen now, I think, is we won't know yet what the level of bid will be from these two parties. They'll want to get a lot of into the data room at Manchester United and go through all the financial details before they actually set a price. And we know the Glazers want at least £5 billion for Manchester United. We think the Rain Group want or are hoping to realise £6 to £8 billion, which is a big difference. So it may be that these two parties go in lower than that, and the next few weeks will be spent sort of haggling over the price and the value of Manchester United. And as I say, because there are at least two bidders now, that should drive that price up and keep the owners happy.